A good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and doesn't Donington look brilliant this evening? We are here for round one of the 939 Corse AROC Touring Car Championship for 2024, and I am very pleased to be here just at the end of qualifying. Apologies there, a couple of technical issues have delayed us joining in, but I can tell you that the drivers have been running well so far in this session. Colin Knief currently leads with a 104.7, followed very closely behind actually by Andy Craker, and we'll dive more into those two and their experience in this car in a moment's time. Yes, a great laps from them so far. Matt Daly not too far behind as well, a 105.0, and then John Coles, well, he's fairly handy in touring car, also in the low 105. So it's looking like all the way down, P1 down to P6, got a nice competitive grid here. So hopefully this bodes well for this championship. And the car, of course, is the LP GT3 version of the Giulia. Well, I say Giulia, it started life as a Giulia, but now has become a GTM spec car, and it is a beautiful car to behold. Just look at it there, the fantastic liveries as well. I believe that is a mixed effort of Guy, Paul Millman, and I believe Greg Young helps out. I could be mistaken there. Well, he certainly helps out by putting his name on the cars, so that's something at least. But yes, we're going to go back on board with Colin Knief, our session leader for now. There's only a minute left on the clock, and no one's currently on a fast lap. So let's see if we can get one or two, maybe more in before the timer hits zero. Heading now towards the end of an outlap with Colin Knief. This might be another opportunity. But here we are. You see the GTAM logo on the front of the car there, signifying that this car has a very special engine indeed, and it does. Listen to that glorious V6 as he runs down towards the final chicane here at Donington. Donington, as you can see as well, a couple of lighting mod tweaks and a slightly different time of day as well has meant that we have a very pretty Donington Park indeed. As we go now on to another fast lap here with Colin Knief. You see in the background a couple of cars there. That was Andy Craker heading on to the back straight there, as we see Will Inglis, and I can't actually make out who that second driver is. I haven't learned the liveries just yet. That is Will Inglis and Matt Daly, who were so close together that time round. But yes, another series, another livery, another set of liveries for me to learn. Will Inglis did lose out that time round. He's found himself now back in the pits. That is the end of his qualifying session as we remain on board with Colin Knief here. Alan Matthews actually looking like he's ready to improve. He's got a very good first sector now. I'm just amazed. That livery looks brilliant. The lime green looking even better than usual. We've got a fantastic set of liveries we've got for this season. We've already dived into livery chat. Would you believe it? We are 2 minutes into the stream and we're already into livery chat. Fantastic. But yeah, Alan Matthews' car looking brilliant there. Losing a little bit of time actually through the middle sector as he comes across the line. He is not able to improve this time round. The only other car behind him, no, there's two other cars there, and that is Colin Knief with a very late entry into the pits there. He decides nothing left for him to do. Now we're in the all-in livery blue car of Andy Craker as he heads down now towards the chicane. The last big braking zone, the last opportunity to make any time. Also a big opportunity here at Donington to lose a lot of time as well. As you get back on to the throttle, it comes across the line. It's a 104.8 to beat, and that was a 107 that time round for Andy Craker. That means now the only car that can improve is Jack Hodson as he heads down now towards that chicane. The white and orange liveried GT3 car there. The brake disc glowing red hot with all the temperature to go into that right-hander. There comes back onto the throttle, and it is into the pit lane as well for Jack Hodson there. So bit of a diminuendo, if you will, towards that session. Look at how out of place my 75 looks in comparison to all those finely honed racing machines. Not, of course, that mine isn't, you know, with its transaxle, but it's quite the contrast there. And speaking of contrast, we're going to change now from qualifying into the first race of this season. Actually, we're not going to do that just yet, because we do have poor Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews is sat there all on his own, lapping around there. Actually, we have a couple of cars leaving the pits now. I wonder why that is. Not quite sure. Will Inglis in the more traditional livery that you usually see this car in. Not quite sure why that is the case. Matt Daly's jumped into this session as well. I'm not sure the stewards usually allow this type of extra practice before the race, but we are here. So while these two get some more practice in, we'll see you in just a few moments' time for race one of this season. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen, back on, well, we were on the grid. Now we're in the pit lane looking at my majestic Alpha 75. Let's have a close look at it then. Isn't that a brilliant car? Fantastic livery as well. But no, let's go back on to the grid here. We're with Colin Knief. There is Matt Daly in P2. That should be... Yeah, that is Matt Daly, Peter. Then we have Andy Craker, then John Cole, Alan Matthews, Will Inglis, Barry Clayton, Jack Hodson, Andy Brammer, and then we have Rob Whitney, Steve Knight rounding out the field there. So, some of these drivers, as we have just over a minute to go now, have a little bit of experience already with this car. Our Winter Endurance Championship was a fantastic short season of quite long races where drivers were able to learn a new car on some very interesting tracks indeed, including myself. I took part in each round of that. I ended up coming P2 in the championship in the end, but I won't talk about the championship too much because you will find out more about that in the next issue of Alfa Romeo Driver, where it's a bit of a winter endurance special, if you will, while we had a bit of a lull in regular series action. But we're certainly about to have some more series action here, though. Unlike the Formula series last week, where we have all of those changes in tyres, everyone here is just on a slick compound of tyre, and it should last plenty of... it should have plenty of tyre life in it in order to make it through this shorter sprint race. So it's going to be all about the getaway here down towards Turn 1 at Donington, of course. We've seen plenty of action at Turn 1 and Turn 2. It's very easy to get forced off the track and completely ruin your race at the start. So we'll be hoping for a clean getaway, as we do in fact have 6 red lights on the gantry. And we are away now for the first race here this season. It is a great getaway by Andy Craker, who in fact is able to break away a little bit from John Cole. Colin Knief actually losing out here as Andy Craker goes up the inside into the first corner. Colin Knief goes a little bit wide, gets forced out wide, actually makes contact with... I don't think Andy Craker was giving enough room necessarily to Colin Knief. Not too much that Colin could do, and he's ended up in a gravel trap. I don't believe he collected anyone else. No, he's just off and at the back of the field now, which is a great shame. Hasn't affected Colin Knief too much, no, who is Matt Daly now is just behind him with John Cole, very close behind indeed. So Colin Knief looking in a good position here already, as we see Will Inglis and Andy Brammer trading positions. That is going to be a little bit hectic there. At that part of the track, it gets even narrower than it is elsewhere. As you see, Alan Matthews up the inside there. Fantastic move on Will Inglis as we wait to rejoin the cars here. Here we are now. We're seeing Colin Knief heading into that that penultimate corner there, with Matt Daly and John Cole in tow. Alan Matthews, meanwhile, on the defensive against Will Inglis. Andy Brammer not too far behind there. Meanwhile, further down the running, it is Andrew Whitehead. No, it's not. It is, apologies there, it is Rob Whitney, Jack Hodson, and Steve Knight. Again, the liveries all new, all going to get very confusing there. I don't believe Rob's has been completed just yet, but certainly stands out in that lovely metallic red as we head through that first corner now. Jack Hodson, meanwhile, actually down in P9 at the moment, lost out on this race start then. He's currently trying to find a way past Rob Whitney. Matt Daly, though, has not been able to catch up with Colin Knief. I rather wondered if John Cole was going to be distracted by the likes of Alan Matthews pushing through. Alan Matthews hasn't been able to catch up as quick as he would have wanted, though, and that has allowed Matt Daly to run freely and catch up to Colin Knief. About just over a second separating those two drivers. Meanwhile, Alan Matthews has done that catching up thing there. It is Will Inglis very close behind, though. So while there's only 1.1 seconds behind John Cole, he's instead got a 4/10 of a second behind Will Inglis to worry about as we head now through those final corners. I'm going to go on board actually with Andrew Brammer with that fantastic Martini liveried car as he runs down that start finish straight there, staying in the slipstream of Barry Clayton. That is, as we're all learning still. Colin Knief he hasn't dropped down, I can confirm, just a bit of a timing error there, although there is certainly something going on here, and that is Steve Knight getting past Rob Whitney through the first and second corner there. One of those big time losses on this lap is that first and second corner. You can either make a massive mistake and go off, or you can just bleed time, and you're carrying all of that speed all the way through turn 5, turn 6 and turn 7, so it can be completely detrimental to your race if you don't nail those first two corners, if you're not confident in pushing the car. And this car can be a little bit sketchy, shall we say, through some of the corners. This might just be my drive. I'm naturally quite what I've come to realise as I eat tyres really, but I naturally enjoy rotating the car around on throttle. And this car, it being a GT3, of course, runs traction control, doesn't really want to do that. And all drivers, I think, taking part of the Winter Endurance Championship reported that it was actually a little bit understeery. So through some of the higher speed corners, it can be a little bit kind of scary. You wonder whether or not the front axle's going to respond. And even through some of the low speed stuff as well, because this is a big car. It is, just because you only see one or two of them out on track and it is a narrow track, don't think that actually it's a normal sized track and it's quite a normal sized car. It is a fairly large car, this, compared to what we usually race, compared to the Juliettas, compared to the Formula Alpha. I believe that is Rob Whitney tumbling down the order there. Steve Knight as well, actually, he was the one tumbling down the order. He's in the pits there. This race coming to a bit of a premature end for him. He dives in, either serves a penalty or gets the car repaired. He might have been stuck there. Either way, out on track now will be, near as makes no difference, a lap down there. As we go back on board with Matt Daly, not challenging Colin Knief. Instead, it is John Cole challenging him as we head now into the penultimate corner. Brake disc glowing red hot, back onto the throttle there. Try to push the car as much as possible to the outside of that corner there, because it is time to be found. But of course, you can go very wrong with just 5 centimetres difference. You can find yourself onto the grass. Another favourite element of mine, as you've heard me talk about in the past, is the cheeky use of the pit lane exit to point the car nicely into that first corner. Sometimes we found doing that as well. And of course, no real risk of a pit stop in this series. Meanwhile, Alan Matthews is also mixing in now with this battle for P2. This could get very interesting indeed. Willie Gliss not too far off, and who knows, Barry Clayton. We'll have a look at the times in just a moment. But this is one of those things that even in a sprint race, you've got to think about the long game. And is this battling that's occurring now potentially compromising them? Well, it must be. If we have a look at their pace, their best laps, Matt Daly, who's now in P2, in fact has been for quite some time, it's a 105.9, his ultimate best lap, whereas John Cole, 105.6. But at the moment, the lapping in the high 1:05. That was actually Matt Daly's best lap on the previous laps. That rather makes it a moot point. But John Cole is very much in the 106s. Alan Matthews, as we talked about, goes a little bit too wide there. Is able to catch it, but that was nearly the end of his race. Is able to carry on behind Will Inglis here, and hasn't lost too much time. He's actually going to fight him heading into that first corner. We can't quite see who has won out just yet. It was still Will Inglis who just about wins out, but good on Alan Matthews for giving it a good go. So again, a bit of glare into the cockpit there. I can't imagine that'd be too pleasant from Matt Daly's side of things, although I imagine he's probably not running the same settings as I am for your viewing pleasure. Matt Daly currently leading this little battle then, still between him and John Cole, not too much really separating them as we head now into that first corner. Tighter than it looks. In fact, the first sector of this track is tighter than it looks. You see turn 1, turn 2, and you think, oh, it's not too much to negotiate at all. But they really do catch your eye. And what I like about it as well is, you know, it's a proper traditional British circuit. There's no vast mountains of tarmac where you can just run wide as you please. It is really quite, I'd say, at somewhere like Sebring, where I had to find some time in some places. Yeah, if you go over the curb, you're straight into the grass, and that's it. That's you being punished quite severely, is what we like to see. So you've got to have your wits about you here at Donington, because this especially is one of the faster cars that you usually see running somewhere like Donington. You know, it hasn't been on the F1 calendar for a long time. You know, 1 minute 5, low 1 minute ranges. You know, is fairly fast. Of course, you get some of the lower formulas also running here, but this is by no means a slow car, and it's certainly a technical track. As we stay on board with Matt Daly heading through that first corner now. Still half a second separating these two cars. Half a second also separating Will Inglis and Alan Matthews. They've dropped back a little further back from these two at the top end, maybe trying to preserve their tyres or just their own battle slowing down a little bit. Let's head now through the Craner curves, these four all occupying the same kind of general vicinity of the track. Colin Knief has broken away by about 5 seconds now, running a very nice race indeed. Actually having a bit of a look up the inside there, John Cole thinking, can I get the move done? Is there enough room? There isn't quite enough room for a big GTM GT3, but I'm sure there is going to be now as he's near enough side-by-side running down into the penultimate corner here. And the back end of Matt Daly's car stepping out. We've seen that in the past as well. The back end trying to drag the car all the way off the track. He did very well to catch that, actually. Imagine traction control, if he is running it, helping out a little bit. Of course, you don't have to run the traction control. There are some GT3 cars, maybe this one. I didn't actually test this car without at least a little click or two of traction control. So it gave me enough to kind of slide it around, but not, you know, it wasn't too invasive, because otherwise that just really would have slowed me down. But, you know, there's certain GT3 cars, at least if you're familiar with the Assetto Corsa Competizione, that really speed up actually around the lap overall with a bit more traction control in the mix, because I suppose it's how the car is designed to be ran. And this pack of four, potentially owing to that slide earlier on, has closed up once again now as we head towards the latter part of the lap. It is very much a quartet heading now down towards the final part of the lap here. And as we head into the S's, it's actually John Cole looking a little bit more on the defence against Will Inglis. He bounces over the curb, the car looks a little bit unsettled, and I thought that Will Inglis looked even more unsettled, and there we are, Will Inglis off the track and into the gravel on the final corner. That is a bit of a disaster for him as he gets back underway now into P6. He's only lost one, potentially two positions in all of that, but he might be under pressure now from Andy Brammer, and is also going to have the added kind of worry of a bit of gravel, a little bit overheating maybe in the rear tyres as well. Whereas Andrew Brammer is very much in the rhythm of things and is lapping quite nicely. We compare their laps at the moment. It is Andrew Brammer with a 106.3. Will Inglis is best on 105.5. Obviously losing about 7 seconds though on that previous lap. Andrew Brammer still in the low 107. So it looks to be that Will Inglis has actually been able to recover from that quite well. And in fact, Alan Matthews has also dropped back from this battle as well. And the battle continues on just as a battle of two as we head into the S's once again. John Cole, a very brave and risky potential move there, heading in to the S's. I'm starting to suspect that Matt Daly's tyres might be starting to drop off a little bit. He also, by the looks of things, isn't running any traction control because that car is certainly looking quite tail happy now through that final corner. Yeah, the tyres are really starting to drop off now by the looks of things for Matt Daly's car, which is interesting. At least, again, completely wrong, a complete misnomer. The front tyres were the ones that were totally limiting me in this car in particular, but maybe a different track and a much better driver is putting the rear tyres under more pressure as John Cole tries to make the move stick, heading through the inside of the left-hander there, heading now down towards Cop Ice. They're still side by side. Matt Daly's going to have the inside this time round, and John Cole, I hope, and he does in fact, relent from the move this time around. He's going to try and carry more speed through Cop Ice though, and as we head down the Starkey Straight, they actually make contact, they bang wheels, paint trading occurring there. Has the outside, but really squeezes Matt Daly into the inside of the track, and Matt Daly with nowhere to go, I think quite rightly continues on. John Cole just not quite leaving enough room, maybe not expecting Matt Daly to stay in it as he did so, and has actually lost out a substantial amount as he does so, dropping down to P6. Will Inglis back up into P5. Matt Daly also losing out there, I should mention, now down into P3. Rob Whitney disconnecting from the server, unfortunately, as we see Alan Matthews now continuing on in P2 with a 2-second margin behind him. So, not going to say from nowhere, but seemingly from, you know, well, he's capitalised on a few people's mistakes to get that first quote in of the season. He's doing quite nicely now in P2, about 11 seconds down on Colin Knief, who is completely checked out at this point, but lapping rather nicely, about 3 seconds ahead of Matt Daly. If you compare their pace at the moment, Alan Matthews appears to actually have slightly higher potential overall in this race. It's a 105.1 on as his best lap, and then Matt Daly at 105.5. Of course, Matt Daly, we don't have a clear current time because his last time was that incident with John Cole there. But his best time 105.5, as I say. And as Alan Matthews comes across the line, it's a 105.6. Matt Daly's in the 106s. So are we starting to see those tyres cost him a little bit of time now? We shall see next time he comes around the S's if the car is behaving in the same manner. Elsewhere in the field, though, Will Inglis is about 0.7 of a second ahead of John Cole. There is John Cole wanting to try and undo some of his mistakes. Still has just under half race distance to do so, so he's certainly not out of it just yet. And as we saw in the previous couple of seasons, John Cole in the mix in the championship as well. So could we see a bit of a resurgence for him here? It's going to be a slow start if it is, but don't count him out just yet. Will Inglis clearly on the defensive here, the back end stepping out as he does so, but good use of the defensive line there. Of course, quite a narrow track at parts, so if he just parks the car in the middle, quite a wide car as well, it will do well to put the driver behind off trying any form of overtaking as we head now down towards the Starkey Straight once again. 0.4 of a second separating these two cars here heading into the S's, and no one bounding over the curbs this time. Everyone being a little bit more careful, I suspect, in order to try and make sure no one goes off into the inside of the track. And we continue on for another lap. Matt Daly 106.2, Alan Matthews 106.7 on that last lap, so losing a little bit of time at the moment. Let's have a look elsewhere. Andy Craker, obviously, qualified on the front row, the back end, and his car stepping out as well. Yeah, that is unfortunate for him overall, because he did very well in qualifying. It was just that one small error at the start of the race has cost him big time. We've had such a competitive field this evening that he hasn't been able to work his way up. He's been running in the 105s, but so has everyone so far in this field at some point or another. They've been doing a very good job out there, and that has meant that Andy Craker, who after the performance in the Winter Endurance Challenge, you'd have to wonder whether or not he would be championship favourite, or at least in contention along the likes of Matt Daly, Colin Keneath. Well, over half the field, really. It's going to be very competitive. You have to wonder whether he was in the mix, but it's not going to start that way. Let's see if race 2, of course, the reverse grid race coming up in a little while, is going to be any different, and maybe a sign of better things to come in race 2. I wonder if anyone out there has been quite as silly as me and has been able to get their tyres up to the temperatures that I achieved at Portimao. Portimao was my worst, where I got the tyres to around about 180 degrees, I believe, or it might have been higher. That final corner, the final right-hander through Portimao, carrying as much speed as physically possible. It worked well. I just seemed to forget that it was an endurance race, and as a result, completely destroyed my tyres. On ball at the moment with race leader Colin Keneath heading through the S's, 15 seconds ahead of everyone else. Best lap by 104.8, the only driver into the 104s in the race. Not too far off his qualifying time, of course, so very impressive there. And a 105.0 as his current pace. So is clearly class and field in this race. Let's have a look at what is going on elsewhere in the pack. We have a bit of a battle forming up there. Barry Clayton is just behind Steve Knight there, so a bit of lap traffic could have some influence here. He's just ahead of Will Inglis and John Cole now as we head into that first corner. As we now head towards the Crane curves. Bit of elevation change coming into effect here. Rob Whitney, glad to see he's joining back in, means he'll get a position on the reverse grid and get a bit more practice too. A little bit slower for Barry Clayton through the Crane curves, has some lap traffic to contend with as well, and oh dear, that was very close indeed. Will Inglis, no, it was John Cole. It was John Cole who had to take avoiding action and is still reaping the repercussions of that. So that was no fault of his own, really. There was just a car in front of him all of a sudden. He loses positions again. A disastrous turn of events for John Cole. Will Inglis, meanwhile, the big winner in all of that, was able to get past Steve Knight with relative ease and is up into P4. Barry Clayton is now past, but has lost a lot of time in doing so, but not quite as much as John Cole, who is now further behind Barry Clayton than he really would have liked. Is now, in fact, behind Andrew Brammer and Andy Craker. So that is John Cole now down in P8, only a few seconds ahead of Jack Hodson. Jack Hodson seemingly in a little bit of no man's land almost in this race. Had some good flashes of pace and was in some decent battles as well, but just unfortunately has had not a race to forget, but not a race to remember either, which, you know, always good to get some points in here or there. Let's see what the reverse grid race will make of him in the coming minutes. Willinglis currently holding the title of best of the rest. Hopefully Commentator's Curse, because Commentator's Curse is a variable thing. Not only does it, you know, completely appear at random, also seems to affect drivers completely at random, apart from the odd exception. And Willinglis is that odd exception. It seems to be Willinglis, I don't think of anyone else, Alex Smith. It tends to be those two who, if I talk about them doing well, it tends to all of a sudden become not very well. Although I don't think anything will ever beat my Brazil end of last season with Matt Daly, who had such a comfortable race lead. And I gave him one small compliment, and that was it. That was race over. So hopefully no more repeat. Hopefully that's what we're going to 2024 without. Now is a little bit less Commentator's Curse. Be ideal. But speaking of ideal, it is Colin Kneath in that Martini liveried car, which I think is my ideal spec as well. Or maybe Andy Brown was the black car with a Martini livery. Either way, the Martini looks exceptional. Leading by about 16 seconds now. Still in the low 1 minute 5, so has been totally in control of this race. It'll be interesting to see if, I imagine this won't be a track that really highlights it, but if at some other tracks the fuel load plays more of an influence on this car or less. Because I found, again, my weird and probably terrible driving style, I tended to find that actually, of course, while there were certain benefits to having less weight in the car, obviously just purely less mass with a bit less fuel, the balance of the car didn't seem to quite suit me as much when it had less fuel in it. And some tracks, it seemed to be very sensitive. Some tracks would really show the car was running a lot lighter than others. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes throughout the season. As we go on board with Andy Craker once again, he's about a second and a half clear of John Cole. John Cole, who I'm sure is going to be doing his utmost to hunt him down, and is doing 106.1 on that last lap, whereas Andy Craker at 107 flat. They both have identical best times, but it seems to be that John Cole has the upper hand later on into this race. So I imagine it's going to be a battle for P6 brewing in just a moment, and those two are, in fact, these three here, so that's Andy Brammer, Andy Craker and John Cole, are the three closest cars on track at this point in time. As we see that, Andy Brammer actually a little bit slower through the corner there, whereas Andy Craker is very much pushing the car at this stage, it must be said. That was running through McLean's there, where taking a slightly wider line, it seemed to reward him with a little bit more pace. Again, you get the same effect running through Cop Ice before you run down the straight towards the S's, and the slipstream, fairly important in this car, I would say. It's of course very powerful, but there's a lot of aero on the car, no matter what you do. It's quite a big car, as I say. And the gearing at some tracks as well can be a little bit odd, so it always helps, I think, to have that little benefit of slipstream, especially at some of those more straight line sensitive tracks. And we're seeing lap traffic once again as Andy Craker tries to find his way past. There's just about a room for a GT3 to squeeze through there, and now we're going to have John Cole once again. Now last time this was attempted with John Cole, it didn't go very well. John Cole does get the room this time around though, and up. Well, I say up into P8, but continues on in P8. Actually runs across the grass there, so a little bit too deep into the corner, a bit too much speed potentially, but continues on, has lost a bit of time compared to Andy Craker. Once again, only a few laps to go. Can he close that gap? Can he get back in to P7? We'll just have to wait and find out, ladies and gentlemen, as I'm sure Colin Kneath is bored of waiting at this point in time. He wants that top trophy already, and on what we've seen so far this evening, he deserves it, and we could be seeing that once again. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you can see his best time, his previous time, and also his predicted lap time this lap. We're 20 laps into this race, of course, relatively short lap, and we could be on for another 1 minute 4 from Colin. So his second 1 minute 4 of the race so far, and that would be very impressive indeed if he is able to do so with worn tyres. But as I say, maybe that fuel load helping him out a little bit there. Or he's just been saving this one in the bank, ready to go, just to impress us even more. Late on the brakes, he could be losing a little bit of time through the S's. He is, in fact, it will dip just over into 105, so sorry there, Colin. Ruined your lap for you. I do apologise. but let's have a look at what is going on further down. I can tell you it is Andy Craker who's closed up to Andrew Brammer now, actually. So John Cole not able to quite keep up with him at this stage in the race, and now we have the battle between the blue and the black car. Hopefully no one here ends up black and blue. Hopefully it will be a nice clean overtake, because it can be a tricky track to overtake on at some points, Donington, but there are some corners like the S's which really do try and offer you an overtaking opportunity. As we head into the S's now, Andy Craker takes potentially a little bit too much curb there. That upsets the balance of the car, cost him a little bit through the S's. Does it? No, it doesn't. He's got great exiting performance out of that final corner there. They're now pretty much side by side. He will have the outside into the first corner, but I don't know if that will matter. No, it won't. Andy Craig then up into P6. Great move by him. And Andrew Brammer losing out there. Now Andrew Brammer potentially under pressure from John Cole. Just a minute to go on the timer. Let's have a look at where Colin Knief is. Colin Knief is now starting the penultimate lap of this race. He's just crossed the line, in fact. So this is now the penultimate lap of this race. As we see these three, who've been battling each other for quite a while now, will continue to do so, and not to be outdone. Willingsliss and Barry Clayton, who were battling, of course, at one point, are also enjoying a battle, and it is a proper battle as well, weaving down the Starkey Straight as they try to force each other off the track. They are still side by side, though, and it will be Willingsliss with the inside into the S's, and Willingsliss maintains the position for now. That is some proper elbows out touring car racing. This might be a GT car, and this might be a touring car championship, but that is some touring car style driving if ever I've seen it. As we have a look now at Andy Craker, Andrew Brammer and John Cole once again. We thought potentially an overtake on the cards. That doesn't look to be the case this time around. We'll see if anything changes over the next lap. Meanwhile, Colin Knief is currently on the penultimate lap of this race. Will be starting the last lap now as he rides through the S's for the second to last time, and he gets ready to complete another lap. On board at the moment with Andrew Brammer, about 4 tenths ahead of John Cole, so don't count anything out just yet. We're watching to see where Colin Knief. Colin Knief is currently heading through the old hairpin as we speak, and not too long to go in this race for him. But it's going to feel like an eternity for these two as they try and run down towards the S's. There is John Cole looking to see if he can intimidate Andrew Brammer a little bit more into those S's. Isn't able to do so this time around. Running as wide as possible on the exit there and back now onto the final lap for these two cars. But speaking of the final lap, we're going to go and have a look at what is happening with Colin Knief. He heads down the Starkey Straight for one last time in this race. It has been a great race for him. Benefited well from a strong start, actually a little bit of a weak start off the line, but was able to keep the nose clean, bounces over the curbs, and was able to check out. And now we have Colin Knief coming across the line to take the Race 1 victory. Congratulations, Colin, for a fantastic drive there. Now let's have a look at our battle, which is still continuing on. John Cole versus Andrew Brammer, still oh so close. Alan Matthews, though, is heading through those final S's now and will take second position. A great drive, again, capitalising on other people's mistakes. Comes home P2. Matt Daly, solid race for him as well. Will be coming home to round out the podium in P3. Meanwhile, Will Inglis, Barry Clayton and Andy Craker battling it out here as they head through the S's themselves. Maybe a little bit too close for comfort for them, but they will come home with Willingsliss best of the rest in the end. Comes home P4, Barry Clayton P5 and Andy Craker P6, and this battle is still going on as we come across the line, and it will just about be Andrew Brammer winning out by a very close margin indeed. Andrew Brammer comes home P7, John Cole will come home P8 in the end, a little bit out of position given his pace in this race. A few unfortunate well, I'm not going to say mistakes, a few unfortunate mishaps, shall we say, coming through in the end there. Jack Hudson comes home P9, and Steve Knight rounds out our point scorers there with a P10 in the end. So that was a fantastic start to this season, and now it gets even more interesting as in just the next few minutes we're going to reverse that grid, at least the top end of that grid, and get ready for some more exciting action here at Donington Park. And welcome back to the action, ladies and gentlemen. Just under 2 minutes to go now until we get away for race 2, as we have a bit of a change in the order, of course. Let's have a look at who is on track. So, in P1 this time around, it is Andrew Brammer. P2, Andy Craker. Then we have on the second row, it is Barry Clayton, Will Inglis. Third row is Matt Daly, Alan Matthews. And then on the fourth row, it is Colin Knief and John Cole, Jack Hudson, Steve Knight, and then Rob Whitney rounding out the field there. It appears that Rob Whitney was actually not happy with the setup in his car, which, fair play. There's, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're watching after the fact, Rob, your first time driving this car. So maybe outside of a bit of practice or whatever, so not quite familiar with the setups yet. I never really got the grasp of it, to be honest. So Rob, in the future, if you are watching, let me know. If not, speaking of those watching, though, if you are watching along on YouTube or Facebook or Twitch as well, so hello, I can see if you're chatting or whatever. So if you've got any questions, do feel free to drop them in the comments section below. As we get ready to go racing in just a moment's time. Just under 30 seconds to go now until lights out for race 2 here at Donington. Again, we're going to watch for that slightly scary start heading through Redgate. It always seems to be a bit of a hot spot, as it was demonstrated in race 1 as well. As we have a grid of GT cars ready to go once again. So we have 6 red lights on the gantry with revs are at pretty much their maximum now, and we are away for another race here at Donington Park. A great start there for Matt Daly, by the looks of things. That is Matt Daly with a fantastic getaway heading into that first corner. There's already contact with a few cars, actually, as we have Alan Matthews on the outside of the corner. No one facing the wrong direction, which is what we like to see. Rob Whitney gaining a position on that start. Will Inglis gaining a position as well. Andy Craker in P1, perhaps where he feels like he should have been in race 1. Matt Daly and Andrew Brammer coming together wheel to wheel, with Andrew Brammer losing out there, actually now potentially losing a position to Colin Knief. Colin Knief, very brave hanging it around the outside, is able to get back onto the tarmac, but that was a certainly risky play there. Colin, my hat's off to you there. As we have Colin in P4, John Cole in P5, Andrew Brammer losing out in P6, Alan Matthews actually losing out there in P7 as well. Jack Hodson running in P8, Rob Whitney in P9, trying to put pressure on Jack Hodson there. As we run down to that, and now we run down towards that final corner there. Andy Craker still leads by about 1 second there. Alan Matthews gets a position actually back into P6. Will Inglis in that all-important 1 second range. Not that we've got DRS, but that slipstream can certainly be helpful on some of the longer parts of the track. Matt Daly, meanwhile, running in P3, of course. How we finish race 1, he means to continue in race 2. So actually, a little bit of a rough and tumble through the likes of the corner curves there, but other than that, a fairly clean getaway. And now we settle into a slightly more stable part of the race, potentially, although it's Donington and it's some very fast GT3 cars, and these guys like to battle each other, so I'm sure we'll certainly won't be relaxed at any point in this race. Hello to Jamie watching on board on YouTube, who asks if there are different setups. Yes, there are. The setup is completely open. You can change it to however suits your needs best. I believe the only restriction is you can't run the car too low ride height wise. So if you've got a full tank of fuel and the car's running too low, the game will tell you off for that. The controllers wise, I believe everyone is on a wheel now, bar even Alex Smith currently on a wheel, actually. Usually he's famous for running a PS5 controller, but he is currently borrowing a wheel, I believe. And there's some cars where you can adjust the setup on the fly, like the likes of our Formula 1 car, where you can adjust things like the ERS recovery or battery mode or whatever, but in the GT car, you can make tweaks to tyre pressure as you come into the pit lane, but other than that, it's what you've set up is kind of what you run for the rest of the race. Matt Daly, meanwhile, is putting pressure on Will Inglis as we head now through Sector 2 on this lap. Matt Daly comparing to Will Inglis. We didn't get to see them really lapping together all that much in the first race, so maybe we'll see a little bit more of that in this second race here. In terms of their pace at the moment, well, we know from the previous race as well, Matt Daly's best was 105.5. He's already beaten that with 105.4. Will Inglis, his current best, Of course, we're only 2 laps in, a 105.6. As we see Matt Daly having a look at the inside there, getting a bit too brave on the braking left, leaving it too late, and Colin Knief actually benefits big time there, runs into P2 as Willinglis gets sent into the gravel. Luckily for him, he was able to get back onto the track without facing the wrong direction or anything like that, so can carry on without too much effect to his race. He's lost a position to Colin Knief, but that potentially, given the pace of race 1, was a little bit inevitable anyway, as we see now Colin Knief up into P2, Willinglis running in P3, and Matt Daly currently running in P4, obviously losing out through the S's that time around, and now under pressure from John Cole. John Cole about 0.2 of a second behind him there as we run now through towards Starkey's Bridge. And yeah, John Cole really putting pressure on here. In fact, putting a bit too much pressure on, actually making contact at about 8 miles an hour that time around. You can actually follow along with the timing on aroc.assetocourseservice.com/live-timing. There you get a proper insight into what is going on in this race. A great supplementary to the commentary as well. You can see the lap times, the best times, and if there's any collisions as well. And there is John Cole, was very brave, darting across the track to try and find a place where a Julia GT3 can fit, and there wasn't one available until that braking zone, and it was the outside, so there's no overtaking to be found there. And now potentially John Cole is going to be under pressure from Alan Matthews in just a moment's time. So let's see how all of this works out for him. It's actually fairly reminiscent. It's the wrong shade of green there of the Brawn GP livery, that one on Alan Matthews' car there, so I approve immensely of it. As we see John Cole currently in the middle really of a Matt Daly and Alan Matthews sandwich. It's not ideal, it's not really where you want to be, because that's certainly not an easy place to be in any race. Matt Daly meanwhile has somewhat stabilised now. He can't quite think about catching up to Willinglis just yet because he's got so much pressure on from behind. And just behind them as well, of course, as those three slow themselves down, is Andrew Brammer, who's certainly got the pace here as well. Jack Hodson, I'm hoping, I think he's got the pace, it's just we weren't able to see anything from him in race 1, so hopefully we see a bit more in race 2. Colin Knief, meanwhile, is hunting down Andy Craker. That gap is getting shorter and shorter by the lap. That was a 104.8, a very, very speedy lap indeed. Meanwhile, Andy Craker is in the low 105, so let's see if that gap will close down even further as we head through Redgate and towards the Craner curves. Once again, it has closed down, now 1.3 seconds. I am sure there's going to be a battle on our hands, if not at the end of this lap, potentially. Less than a second separating them now as we head through towards the end of the second sector of this lap. I do love it's one of those tracks which just flows so nicely. The laps just go by thick and fast. There's always something to talk about. There's always something going on track as well. It's a brilliant traditional British circuit, which, as we've said already, is well, you can't get much better, really, can you, for touring car / GT racing. As we head out through those S's, once again the gap stands at just half a second now. Tyre marks in the gravel where it's gone wrong for a few drivers in the past. Hasn't gone wrong for these two just yet, though. Has it gone wrong there for John Cole? It has. That is not ideal. The exit of the S is the back end just stepping out and giving up entirely. That is John Cole now down into P6, potentially P7, if things go awry for him at the start of the next lap. But Andy Craker, meanwhile, is now very much on the defensive against Colin Knief. This is now a battle for the lead of this race. We haven't had one of them so far this evening. We're going to have one now as we run through the Craner curves. Coming up next, it is Starkey's Bridge and McLean's. And it's the inside going to Andy Craker there. They actually make contact ever so slightly, but no major ill effects from that, running down now towards Cop Ice in just a second. Half a second separating them once again. So Andy Craker using that tight and twisty nature of the middle part of this track to his benefit and keeping Colin Knief at bay. You can take so many easy defensive lines there to keep the car behind you. As we head through the S's once again. Colin Knief taking a little bit more curb that time round to get back onto the loud pedal of Form 1. More blast down towards the first corner once again. Meanwhile, Willinglis and Matt Daly, they've certainly battled each other a couple of times already this evening. They're going to battle each other even more in this second race here. It is Willinglis on the defensive against Matt Daly. It went wrong for him last time round, obviously. That unfortunate accident, one of those racing incidents really heading into the final corner. And hopefully that doesn't replicate itself as we head back on board, though, with Colin Keneath. There's plenty going on elsewhere, though. It is Barry Clayton against Jack Hodson. As Jack Hodson, how's he lapping at the moment? I can tell you he's currently running in the low 106s. That's his best lap, actually. His previous lap was a 108. So I suspect these two slowing each other down with a bit of battling here. Let's go back on board with Colin Keneath running down Starkey Straight once again. And into the Esses. We're expecting around about 22-23 laps. That's what we had in the previous race. Less than half race distance, I am pleased to report. As we see, that is Matt Daly. Matt Daly in the background there. I don't know if you just saw that, taking just a little bit too much of speed through the final corner there, and the car giving up and sending him a little bit wide. He was luckily only just clipped the grass, so it didn't cost him too much, but he doesn't want to try and replicate that again. As he'll find himself in the wrong, facing the wrong direction. I think, in terms of like kind of a difficulty scale, you start, you know, there's parts of a track that are quite easy, and then there's parts of a track that are really quite difficult and technical. Donington's going to have one of the steepest difficulty gradients, if you will, because the track's quite nice and quite flowing and technical in some parts, but enjoyable to drive. And then the S's just kind of hit you with they're just evil. And they've certainly caught a few very experienced drivers out this evening, as Colin Keneath has been rather caught out by Andy Craker in this race so far. Nothing he has had in his armoury really has worked in order to allow him to get past now as we run down the start-finish straight once again, hanging in the slipstream of Andy Craker's car there. Just glued to his rear bumper as they use the pit exit there to try and set the car up for that first corner. And no time to be found there, but there might be time to be found here. Running into that second corner on the exit of the first, Andy Craker at the back end steps out on his car, and it nearly goes very wrong for him. Cost him some time, but he was able to defend actually. So Colin Keneath still remains behind for the time being, but Willie for much longer, as they are now side by side. We're running through towards turn 4 here. Still side by side now as we head towards McLean's in just a second. Got the crane curves to negotiate first, though, and this is where it could go all wrong for Colin Keneath. It doesn't, for Andy Craker. It doesn't, though. Somehow he is able to keep Colin Keneath at bay. Fantastic defensive driving on display here by Andy Craker. Meanwhile, Willie Gliss is a few tenths ahead of Matt Daly, doing his own defensive driving here. The top 4 is all change at this stage in the race. Not quite at the halfway distance just yet. And there's still plenty of battling to be done. Barry Clayton, it's all gone wrong for him. He finds himself planted in the barriers here. That is a disaster. He's a very fast driver indeed, and certainly deserves a good number of points in the championship, but it is not the way to go about it. Unfortunately, facing the wrong direction, still is struggling to get this car restarted. I found that actually in the Winter Endurance Championship. It can certainly be difficult to get the car underway once again. Hopefully we don't see that being proven between Willie Gliss and Matt Daly in the midst of their epic battle going on here. But I transport myself back to Sebring in the Winter Endurance Championship, where I had a very unfortunate slight collision with Andrew Rubber. Totally not his fault, but I ended up basically kind of slightly punting him off track. I was too late on the brakes, and it was just so difficult to get this car underway. Once again, it's so reliant on the epic amount of downforce that massive rear wing produces. And of course, once you get these slick tyres messy or dirty as well, they're like ice blocks, really. There's just no grip at all. That is John Cole, in fact, who just got ahead of Rob Whitney. Rob Whitney has quietly been running a very nice race here in Dido. There was actually contact between the two of them there. It looked to be, of course we didn't see it, but I can see that John Cole now no longer has a front wing and is looking like he's struggling to get the car going as well. Really struggling, in fact. That is a disaster for John Cole. He's in the barrier once again. Not sure of the suspension damage on that one. Either way, his race really not going the way that he would have wanted. This round's not going the way that he would have wanted. Not going Colin's way either. He's only got one race win under his belt at the moment and is struggling to get the second at this point in time. Andy Craker is making a fantastic adversary for him. But could it be undone here? let's see now as we head through the crane curves and the second sector of the lap. Once again, there's been contact between Steve Knight and Alan Matthews, as that is Steve Knight in the inside of the track there, actually enjoying some Alpha Rallycross, if you will. He is able to carry on though. Meanwhile, Colin Cleef still putting the pressure on Andy Craker as we head around that final corner once again. Heading through the first corner now. It's actually a fair amount of time separating these two for the first time in a good few laps. So maybe this is a chance for Andy Craker to breathe a little bit, to kind of drop back the pace by about 3% maybe, and give those tyres just a little bit of respite and make sure that the car is pleasant to drive on the way home. We'll have to wait and see though. Meanwhile, behind, it's still battling between Will Inglis and Matt Daly. Just over 10 minutes to go in this race. Now, this battle has been going on for even longer than the battle between Andy Craker and Colin Knief, I believe. As we head now towards the crater curves, it's Matt Daly with the inside line here. However, that does not give him the inside for the next corner. No, correct me, I'm completely wrong. Of course it does, because we're not through the crater curves, we're through cop lights. I do apologise there. That was a very amateurish mistake. They are side by side now, heading down towards the S's once again. Around the outside, late on the brakes. Can Will Inglis make the move stick? He can. A fantastic move from Will Inglis there. Has the inside for the final corner of the lap and is back in P3. A brilliant drive from Will Inglis so far. Matt Daly, though, not to be outdone, wants to fight it back. He's going to try his rival's trick at him. He's going to try and hang it around the outside of the first corner. Not often that is successful, but it wasn't to be this time either. As we head now down towards the crater curves in just a moment's time, it is Will Inglis still leading this battle. Meanwhile, Colin Cleef has begun to close that gap towards Andy Craker once again. And that gap closing up even more now to only 0.2 of a second as we head down Starkey Straight once again. Going to be in that slipstream, but is it enough? Is this is, you know, it could be negligible pace difference between these two cars. It could be something as small as a very slight setup tweak. You know, maybe running a bit too much toe out or just one click of wing could be costing Colin Knief here. Who knows? Because he seems to be matching Andy Craker's pace in terms of straight line speed, but that is with the slipstream. So he might be requiring that slipstream in order to hang on with it. I could be completely wrong. We could see him in the next lap have a very brave move and get the move to stick. But let's just see now as we head towards the crater curves once again. Staying completely within Andy Craker's wake at this point in time, is not making any form of attempts to try and have a look around the outside. This is one of those tracks, obviously, your car drives wherever. Your car follows your eyes, really. As the back end on Colin Cleef's car steps out big time there. He is able to pick it up and recover it, but has scrubbed off about 3 seconds of a 3/10 of a second, sorry, as he did so there, which is not ideal. Of course, the more he does that, the more hot the tyres are going to get and the less grippy they're going to become, and the more that is going to become likely. So it's not ideal. Meanwhile, speaking of a battle, though, Matt Daly and Will Inglis were battling. They were trading positions, and now Matt Daly seems to be quite far behind, so I wonder if a bit of contact was involved there. As we head now towards the start of the next lap, once again with Andy Craker and Colin Cleef. This is becoming a very familiar sight now, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully, it's a sign of things to come, really, for this season, because this will be a very interesting race indeed. This will be a very interesting few races indeed. Just getting some interesting feedback actually on the end of the previous race. Actually, some communication between John Cole and Matt Daly. There was an unfortunate racing incident that put an end to John Cole's race seemingly there, but all well now, and for race unfortunately it wasn't to be for John Cole either, I suppose. But we get back with this battle now. Andy Craker and Colin Cleef, 0.2 of a second separating them still, which has just become kind of part of the course, really, as we head now through that final part of the lap. Lapping quite comfortably in the mid 105s, have been doing so now for quite some time. Colin Cleef still with that impressive 104.8, Andy Craker low 105 or 105.2, and both lapping identical lap times at this point in time. So they're demonstrating some great racecraft here, actually. They're able to battle and push each other to the limit without slowing themselves down, which isn't always a given. We're lapping in the mid-105s, still the two fastest cars out on track despite this battling that's continuing on. So really impressive job from these two here. Just over 5 minutes ago now in this race, around about 7 laps remain, maybe 6, as we see it's still Andy Craker leading Colin Keith. Not too much. Colin is able to kind of pull out the bag at this stage. Maybe he's looking after those tyres ever so slightly, waiting for his moment to pounce. Converse could also be true. Could be completely muttering his tyres. We'll just have to see. Now, usually around about the 65 minutes remaining in the race is when we start to see any kind of big tyre disadvantages really rear their ugly head. Is when, you know, if you've ran on 2 clicks of a compound too soft, if you're running on like a super soft when you should really be on a soft or a medium. It's around about this stage when you'll start to see that the tyre really starts to give up on you, start to lose the pace. The bit of a cliff edge comes into effect at this point in the race. So we'll see now if that is the case for anyone. Of course, we're on the same tyres, everyone here, but your driver style and setup will certainly dictate how well the tyre lasts. As we get back on to the start-finish straight, 2 tenths still separating the minutes. I might as well just cut and paste it, go into Audacity, cut and paste that little segment of audio, just kind of click it in OBS to just kind of come on whenever these two start the next lap, because it has been oh so consistent from them at this stage. Andy Craker leading this race and leading it well, showing that, you know, his impressive qualifying performance and the contrast between that and race 1 really wasn't a sign of things to come. You know, he does have the ability to lead a fantastic race. It's just a shame that one small error there cost him big time in race 1. It also shows how competitive the field was as well, because as Andy's demonstrated here, he's got the pace to keep Colin Keith at bay and lead a race very effectively. But in race 1, he was stuck in P8. There was nothing that he could do. So we're going to have a very competitive field on our hands, ladies and gentlemen, now as we head down Starkey Straight once again. 4 tenths of a second separating these two cars. And these two are the closest on track at this point in time. And would you believe it, they're on the start-finish straight with 2 tenths of a second to go. Meanwhile, Steve Knight running in at P9, so up with a couple more points under his belt as things stand, although John Cole, I can tell you, is currently hunting down. Oh dear, sorry, I've tuned out of just the wrong inopportune moment there, heading into the first corner. Andy Craig goes a little bit too deep into the corner, fumbles it ever so slightly and finds himself on the gravel trap there. What a shame. The one time I tune out ends up going very wrong indeed. For Andy Craker. What a shame. Is that potential? I think we might have to label that under commentator's curse. I think I've just spent too long singing his praises, and it was too close, really, for that mistake too creeping for it not to be commentator's curse. Andy Craker now down in P2 with a 2-second margin. It's looking a little bit easier for Colin Keith at this point in time, unless Andy can do anything. But I suspect his tyres are probably quite worn from all of that hunting down. Collins aren't looking amazing either, it must be said, so we'll have to see if maybe fortunes can reverse for Andy Craig, although I'm sure we'll be very impressed to see a Colin Keith Grand Slam here. That'd be very impressive indeed. Meanwhile, Willingless has been running for quite some time now ahead of Matt Daly. Of course, those two were having a fantastic battle just a few laps ago, and Willingless won out in that one in the end with a fantastic move through this corner actually, and has been able to maintain that P3 ever since. So we're seeing the reverse grid race doing its job. It's given a few drivers some amazing opportunities in race 2 to show that they've also got what it takes, and it gives us a bit more of an indication that this season is going to be utterly brilliant, I suspect, with a great car and some really competitive drivers there. Rob Whitney, what a shame. His race has actually been going really well so far, running quietly in the points and doing a very nice job of it. Has unfortunately dropped back all the way to the bottom of the field. The cars in the lead there have to take avoiding action, and he is struggling somewhat to get the car on the way. A bit of a recurring theme of this evening for a few drivers. And Rob Whitney unfortunately taking himself out of the points here in race 2. What a shame for him. But John Cole now back up into P8. Not where he wants to be, of course. He certainly has the pace for some more points. It just wasn't to be this in this round at this venue. But we'll wait to see what he can do in the next race in a fortnight's time. Andy Craker, meanwhile, is still within that 2-second margin, just not quite as close as he'd want to be, I am sure. Barry Clayton, meanwhile, is defending from John Cole. In fact, no, he's just overtaken John Cole to be up into P8 now. So John Cole seems to be a bit of a race to forget for him, really. As Barry Clayton also on a recovery drive here. Let's not forget, had an early race incident, of course, back up into P8. All these points, though, do matter. We've seen some very close championships indeed in the past. And it can be a case of 3 or 4 points settling the score in the end. So I'm sure the drivers are really going to want to fight for each and every point. Meanwhile, there's Colin Keefe negotiating some lapped traffic, and this next lap will now be the penultimate lap of this race, which is a great shame. It's been a fantastic first round of the season, so let's see what a few of these drivers can do, if there is anything that Matt Daly can do. I can tell you, though, Matt Daly's certainly going to give it a shout now as we head through that first corner. Rob Whitney, unfortunately, retiring from this race there. As we see Will Inglis running about half a second clear at this stage in the race. If we compare their pace overall, it is actually Matt Daly who wins out this time around. He was in the mid 105s in the previous race, has now got himself into the low 105s, so it's a 105.2 being his best lap. Will Inglis' best lap being a 105.6, which I believe matches what he did in race 1. In terms of their current pace, Matt Daly is faster by about a tenth of a second, so there's very fine margins in it indeed, but still a margin nonetheless. As we see, there's Colin Keefe heading around that final corner for one final time, and for the first time in a while, I'm not saying with only 2 tenths behind Andy Craker, because it's Andy Craker about 2 seconds behind him as we now start the final lap of this race, with Will Inglis looking a little bit more comfortable ahead of Matt Daly, at least for the time being. Let's see how that gap changes as they head down the start-finish straight. I think Matt Daly is running a little bit less aero than Will Inglis, because he seems to be closing in through those straights rather, and is certainly putting the pressure on into the braking zones, which is a really good strategy, of course. It just hasn't quite worked out for him so far this evening. You know, Barry Clayton just ahead of John Cole. These two are very competitive. They've raced each other up plenty of times before, and they seem to be relatively close so far this evening in terms of pace, so it's good battle going on here. As we see Colin Keefe just behind them, actually, so we'll get a great view of it. As John Cole flashes his headlights, we see Colin Keefe heading around the final corner for one last time this evening. He wasn't in P1 for very long this race, but he certainly got the move done when it counts, and he comes across the line to take his second race victory of the evening, weaving in celebration. Congratulations, Colin. A brilliant drive there. Congratulations and commiserations, Andrew. Great pace. Well-deserved P2. You also deserve P1 there. A great drive all around. There we have now Matt Daly just behind Will Inglis. Will Inglis comes home to round out the podium in P3. Matt Daly P4. So good points this evening for him in the end. Andy Brammer, he always does this. He's done this for the past few seasons now. He just quietly gets on with a really good race and comes home in the mid-pack somewhere, usually, if not a little bit higher, and gets some really good points on the board. He's really consistent, and it certainly bodes well for the championship. Jack Cotton, in the end, made a few positions, comes home P6, as Alan Matthews as well recovers to P7. I'm sure he would have wanted and certainly would have deserved higher in the end. Barry Clayton and John Cole still battling until the bitter end here as we head into that final corner. Once again, John Cole's going to try a very late, very last-minute move there. That was a bit opportunistic, but the gap was certainly open as Barry Clayton doesn't lose a position. In fact, no, he gains a position because that John Cole was completely unsettled through the final corner. So in the end, no major effect really of that. Barry Clayton comes home P8. John Cole will come home P9, and then Steve Knight rounds out the running in P10. That was certainly a very interesting end to the race there. It's going to get even more interesting, though, as we have our victory donuts from Colin Keefe. as he stalls it. Oh. We've got some donuts from Willing's List at least. We've got some donuts from Matt Daly there as well. Who else do we have donuts from? We have the donuts from, I believe that is Barry Clayton there. Alan Matthews, it looks like he could be joining in on some in just a second. Donuts all around then. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this as much as I've enjoyed commentating this evening. And we'll catch you in a fortnight's time for round 2, and next week, of course, for the next round of the Formula Alpha Championship. So thank you very much, and a good night.